Sarah Pressman from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I reserve my right to yield to Harburg from Montpelier.
That is your right.
Okay. First of all, I'd just like to address what some previous speakers have spoken of, but they were talking about how the government and how they don't have the right, or they should tax because the people or the families, the relatives didn't work for that money. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that the family whose inheritance that originally was brought up by, they made that money not for the government, they worked to make that money for their family. And when they did make that money, they may have actually had family and ones to provide for. So what's the difference between providing for a family today and then providing for a family even if they're gone? Also, again, I'd like to stress that 55% of their inheritance is being taken away. I find that a huge and pretty ridiculous amount. That's more than the majority of their money and their inheritance, their heirlooms of their family being taken away. Thank you. I yield my time to Harburg.
You've yielded 1 minute and 5 seconds.
Julia Harburg, representing Montpelier. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Please display your placard. Delegates, she knows.
Please let me remind you all that America is a land of opportunity, that you can work hard and you get rewarded when you work hard. You don't just give away the money that you worked so hard for. This tax is simply un-American just to give away the money that you've worked hard for. Yes, some people are old money and they have had the money for generations, but also some people come up from the bottom and they work hard and earn that money, earn millions of dollars, which if they do not live a lavish lifestyle, actually a good amount of people can make, and then they pass it on to their family. And let me bring all of the committee's attention to lines 29 and 30. The closer family members of the deceased receive the highest exemptions. That is ridiculous that the closest family members receive the highest taxations. And then also, this is just un-American. If your parents lived an unlavish lifestyle and they gave you an inheritance that they worked so hard for, how would you feel?
I'm sorry, Delegate, your time has elapsed.
KC, Florida. I reserve my right to yield to Grover from Virginia.
That is your right.
Thank you. In response to a previous delegate, I believe the line is they have the highest exemptions from tax, not the highest tax rate. Also, I think in this time of recession, where we have failing social programs which draw heavily upon our budget, I don't think we should withdraw $200+ billion from the general revenue fund. Also, to address the point that this is communist, I believe that this tax is older than communism, so I don't believe that's necessarily true, plus it's been American for a long time. Also, as someone who fully understands the meaning of inheritance, I'm much more attached to I was much more attached to my father than I am to the money he's left behind. So I have no problem giving a portion of that money if he had more than $1 million to the federal government. $1 million is well above and beyond the price for me to go to college, for me to buy a house, to do whatever I wish with that money. And I yield the remainder of my time to Grover from Virginia.
You've been yielded 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to add,
Please introduce yourself.
Grover from Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you.
I currently like to add that we're in a huge fiscal hole because of the recession that's taken out the past 3 years or so. And we detach such things as alcohol, tobacco, gambling, and especially estate and inheritance taxes. We tax these things that people don't go to, don't use as often. But we have a high tax, we make a lot of revenue. And I believe that these taxes are very commonplace. They've been here for God knows how long, and it would be best to keep the taxes and gain large revenue, and instead not have to raise, very high income and sales taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, we can debate back and forth as to whether taxing and inheritance is morally right or not, but you can't argue with statistics, and numbers don't lie. So let me just go through a few things. First, let me address the redistribution of the wealth. After the Civil War, the inheritance tax was repealed in 1870 because they knew that the Civil War was over, we didn't need to fund anymore. Then during FDR's presidency, it was brought back in simply, according to whitehouse.gov, to redistribute the wealth, which is not how you stimulate the economy, because let me finish. Also, to address as to what our country was made for, we also, as a country, we don't simply redistribute the wealth, which was the main reason to bring back this tax, because as a country, we work for our money, as said before, but if a family keeps it, and as stated, if we can provide for them in life, why can't we provide for them in death? Also, let's see here. Oh, I wanted to address the exemptions that was talked about. In 2001, a bill was passed that said that in 2010, the inheritance and estate taxes would go on break and there would be no inheritance tax for 2010. In 2011, it said it would come back in at 55% and those exemptions for closer family members would be drastically lowered. So those will not exist when this tax comes back in next year. Also, now let me go into the numbers of how losing this tax can do more than benefit our economy. Former U.S. Congressional Budget Office Director Douglas Holtz-Eakin found that a permanent repeal could create 1.5 million jobs at no cost to taxpayers. This would add 1.5 million free jobs compared to the roughly several million that were added to a multi-billion dollar stimulus package, which cost taxpayers billions and billions of dollars. This costs taxpayers nothing. Also, it is estimated that getting rid of this inheritance tax will raise $5.7 trillion in revenue annually because the money that is going to versus going to the federal government is going to the people who deserve their inheritance. And yes, it will get reinvested back into the economy, which boosts the economy, gains more revenue, and we all receive that as a reward. That's good for everyone. I just want to reiterate exactly about how it was in 2009, the inheritance tax percentage was at 39%, and it's jumping up to 55%, which it's already putting a stress on the family who receive inheritance estates over $1 million, and they can't afford to pay the inheritance tax without selling the estate. Just a moment. The inheritance and estate taxes were not in place this year, as I've stated before, and it would be much more feasible and realistic if this tax was done away with this year, since it doesn't exist this year. And I just want to reiterate the amount of revenue that could be generated from getting rid of this tax, $5.7 trillion annually, when our deficit is $13 trillion roughly. So let's see, 3 years, and that pays for a lot of deficit. So thank you, and I yield my time to Chair.
Thank you, Delegate.